She's just a waitress. Xander. She probably can't even spell caviar, let alone afford it. Those were the words that sealed Tiffany's fate. She thought the quiet girl in the apron was invisible and nobody she could humiliate for sport while her billionaire boyfriend looked away. She thought money bought class and silence. She was wrong. What Tiffany didn't know was that the nobody pouring her water wasn't just a waitress. She was holding a secret that could destroy the biggest deal of Barrett's life. And when the truth came out not in English, but in flawless, commanding Arabic, the silence in the room was deafening. You might want to sit down for this one. This is the story of how a billionaire's girlfriend pushed the wrong woman too far. The rain in Manhattan wasn't the romantic kind you saw in movies. It was the aggressive, stinging kind that lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Le Coucou, one of Soho's most exclusive French restaurants. Inside, however, the weather didn't exist. Inside, the air smelled of brown butter, expensive perfume, and old money. Andrew Jenkins adjusted her apron in the reflection of the brass espresso machine. She looked tired. At 26, Andrew had the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from balancing a full-time PhD workload at Columbia University with 40-hour weeks carrying trays of heavy porcelain. Her eyes, usually a sharp, intelligent hazel, were rimmed with red. "Table 4 is yours, Andrew." Henri, the floor manager, snapped, walking past her with a terrifying swiftness. Henri was a man who believed that a waitress smiling too much was gauche, and smiling too little was insubordination. VIP, Mr. Amanda. Do not mess this up. His guest is difficult. Andrew felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Barrett Amanda. Everyone in New York knew the name. The heir to Amanda & Co., a venture capital firm that owned half the skyline. He was 32, devastatingly handsome in that effortless, neglected way, and currently the subject of every tabloid because of his new girlfriend, Tiffany Dubois. Tiffany was an influencer, turned socialite, the kind of woman who treated service staff not like people, but like malfunctioning appliances. "I've got it, Henri," Andrew said, smoothing her black skirt. She took a deep breath. She just needed to get through this shift. Just 4 more hours, and she could go back to her tiny apartment in Queens, open her thesis on linguistic nuances in post-Cold War diplomatic relations in the Gulf, and forget that she was just a servant in the eyes of these people. She walked out onto the floor, the ambient jazz humming low. Table 4 was the best seat in the house, a semi-private alcove with a view of the open kitchen but enough distance to offer intimacy. Barrett Amanda was already seated. He was looking at his phone, his brow furrowed, thumb scrolling rapidly. He wore a navy suit that likely cost more than Andrew's entire student loan debt. Across from him sat Tiffany. She was striking, undeniably. Platinum blonde hair styled in loose, perfect waves, wearing a red dress that was cut aggressively low. She was scanning the room, her expression hovering somewhere between boredom and disdain. Andrew approached the table, the water pitcher heavy in her hand. "Good evening," Andrew said, her voice practiced and neutral. "Welcome to Le Coucou. My name is Andrew, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Would you like to start with?" Tiffany didn't look up. She picked up her fork and examined the tines as if checking for rust. "Sparkling," she interrupted, waving a hand dismissively. "And make sure it's chilled. The last time we were here, the water was lukewarm. It was disgusting." Barrett looked up, startled from his phone. His eyes were a piercing gray, and for a second, he looked embarrassed. "Tiffany, please. The water was fine last time. It was tap water." "Xander," she snapped, finally glancing at Andrew. Her eyes swept over Andrew's uniform, lingering on a small fray in the collar of her shirt. A smirk touched her lips. "Make sure this one understands. San Pellegrino, not tap." "Of course, madam," Andrew said, her grip tightening on the pitcher. "I'll bring that right out. And tell the chef," Tiffany added, her voice raising just enough for the neighboring table to hear, "that if the scallops are rubbery again, I'm sending them back. I don't care if he is Michelin-starred." "I will convey the message," Andrew said. As she turned to leave, she heard Tiffany's voice drop to a loud whisper. "Honestly, Xander, look at her shoes. Do they not pay them enough to buy polish? It's depressing. It ruins my appetite. Andrew paused for a fraction of a second, her back stiffening. She looked down at her black non-slip work shoes. They were scuffed. She had walked 6 miles in them yesterday to save subway fare. She swallowed the lump of pride in her throat and kept walking. She needed this tip. She needed to pay her tuition. She couldn't afford a scene. Not yet. The dinner rush began in earnest at 8 p.m. The restaurant was a cacophony of clinking crystal and hushed conversations about mergers and Hamptons rentals. At table 4, things were deteriorating. Barrett Amanda seemed distracted. He kept checking his watch, his leg bouncing nervously under the table. He wasn't eating his appetizer. Xander, you're not listening to me, Tiffany whined, stabbing at her tuna tartare. I said, the gala in Milan is next week. I need the jet. Commercial is just, it's full of germs. I told you, Tiff, Barrett said, rubbing his temples. The jet is in maintenance, and I have that meeting tonight. The one I told you about, the Al Hassan deal? Oh, the oil people? Tiffany rolled her eyes. Boring. It's not boring. It's a $2 billion infrastructure deal in Riyadh, Barrett said, his voice tight. Mr. Al Hassan is flying in tonight. He might even stop by here. It's crucial that we make a good impression if he does. Andrew was refilling their wine glasses, a 2015 Chateau Margaux that cost $800 a bottle. She moved with the silent grace of a ghost, trying to be invisible. Well, I hope he speaks English. Tiffany laughed, taking a large gulp of the wine. I hate having to listen to that guttural noise. It sounds like they're choking. Andrew's hand froze for just a millisecond. The liquid in the bottle wavered. Barrett looked pained. Tiffany, keep your voice down. These are sophisticated people. They are highly educated. Whatever. She dismissed him. Then, she noticed Andrew standing there. Tiffany turned in her chair, narrowing her eyes. Excuse me? Yes, madam? Andrew asked. You poured his more than mine, Tiffany accused, pointing at the glasses. Are you trying to say he needs it more? Or are you just incompetent? The glasses were perfectly even. Andrew had been pouring wine for 4 years. She could measure an ounce by weight alone. I apologize if it seems that way, Andrew said calmly. I can top yours off. No, Tiffany covered her glass with her hand. Now it's tainted. You were hovering. It's creepy. Go away. Barrett sighed, reaching for his wallet. Tiffany, stop. She's doing her job. She's doing a bad job, Xander. Look at her. Tiffany gestured vaguely at Andrew's face. She looks like she hasn't slept in a week. It's unhygienic. I don't want a zombie handling my food. Andrew felt the heat rise up her neck. It wasn't just the insult, it was the sheer lack of humanity. She looked at Barrett, waiting for him to defend her, to act like the gentleman the tabloids claimed he was. Barrett looked at Andrew. He saw the fatigue in her eyes, the scuffed shoes, the way her hands were trembling slightly. For a moment, he looked sympathetic. But then he looked at Tiffany, and the path of least resistance won. Just give us a moment. Please, Barrett said to Andrew, avoiding her gaze. Certainly, sir, Andrew whispered. She retreated to the server station, her heart pounding against her ribs. Rough table? It was Marco, the sommelier. He was polishing a decanter. She's a nightmare, Andrew murmured, leaning against the counter. She thinks because she has a Cartier bracelet she can treat people like dirt. She's insecure, Marco shrugged. Barrett is old money. She's new money. She has to scream to be heard. Just ignore it. Take their money and run. I'm trying, Andrew said. But he mentioned the Al Hassan deal. Marco paused. The Saudi infrastructure project? Andrew nodded. Barrett is terrified. He's waiting for a Mr. Al Hassan. Big stakes, Marco whistled. If that girl opens her mouth in front of a Saudi royal, game over. Andrew looked back at the table. Tiffany was now taking selfies with the flash on, blinding the diners at the adjacent table. Barrett had his head in his hands. Andrew knew something they didn't. Through her PhD research, she knew exactly who the Al Hassan family was. They were traditional, incredibly private, and valued respect above all else. They despised ostentatious displays of wealth and rudeness. If Tiffany acted like this in front of them, Barrett wouldn't just lose the deal. He would be blacklisted from the region. Andrew checked the reservation tablet. There was a blocked-out slot for 9 p.m. under the name A.H. It was 8:55 p.m. The door to the restaurant opened. The wind blew in, carrying the scent of rain. 2 men entered. They were dressed in immaculate Western suits, but Andrew recognized the cut Savile Row, bespoke. The man in front was older, with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes that missed nothing. It was Omar Al-Hassan, and he was walking straight toward Barrett's table. Andrew watched as the floor manager, Henri, panicked. He hadn't realized who the VIP was. He was scrambling to grab menus, but Andrew was already moving. She grabbed a fresh pitcher of water and a basket of warm bread. She wasn't going to let Henri bumble this. As she approached the table, she heard Tiffany's voice piercing the air. Finally, Tiffany groaned, looking at the door. Is that them? They look so serious. Do I have to bow or something? I'm not bowing to anyone, Xander. I'm an American. Barrett hissed. Tiffany, shut up. Please. He stood up, buttoning his jacket, a fake smile plastered on his face. Mr. Al-Hassan. What an honor. Mr. Al-Hassan stopped at the table. He didn't smile. He looked at Barrett, then at Tiffany, who was slouching in her chair, scrolling on her phone, not bothering to stand or acknowledge him. Mr. Amanda, Al-Hassan said. His voice was deep, accented but clear. I hope I am not interrupting your dinner. Not at all, not at all, Barrett said, sweating. Please, join us. This is my partner, Tiffany. Tiffany looked up, popped a piece of gum, and gave a little wave. Hi. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a diamond. In Gulf culture, standing to greet a guest, especially an elder, is mandatory respect. Tiffany remaining seated was a slap in the face. Mr. Al-Hassan's eyes narrowed slightly. He remained standing. Perhaps this is a bad time, Al-Hassan said coldly. We can reschedule. Barrett looked like he was about to have a heart attack. No, please. Sit. Andrew. He snapped his fingers at Andrew, who was hovering nearby. Chairs. Now. The way he snapped his fingers like she was a dog broke something inside Andrew. She brought the chairs. She set the table for the new guests. She poured the water. And then, the accident happened. As Andrew reached across to place a napkin in front of Mr. Al-Hassan, Tiffany shifted abruptly, throwing her arm back to fix her hair. Her elbow slammed into Andrew's arm. The pitcher of ice water tilted. A cascade of freezing liquid poured directly into Tiffany's lap and splashed onto the sleeve of Mr. Al-Hassan's pristine suit. The restaurant went silent. Tiffany screamed. It was a high-pitched, glass-shattering shriek. She jumped up, her red dress soaked. You idiot, Tiffany screamed, shoving Andrew backward. Andrew stumbled, catching herself on the edge of the table. I'm so sorry. She hit my arm, Andrew stammered. She hit your arm? You clumsy, stupid cow. Tiffany yelled, her face twisting into something ugly. She grabbed a cloth napkin and threw it at Andrew's face. Look at my dress. This is Valentino. You've ruined it. Tiffany, stop, Barrett shouted, horrified. He turned to Mr. Al-Hassan, grabbing a napkin to dab at the man's suit. Sir, I am so sorry. She's just clumsy. We'll have her fired immediately. Andrew froze. Fired? She looked at Barrett. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the investor, desperate to save the deal, willing to throw her under the bus to appease the room. Get out of my sight, Tiffany hissed at Andrew, stepping closer, looming over her. You are worthless. You serve food because you're too stupid to do anything else. Go back to the kitchen and cry, you little rat. Mr. Al-Hassan was watching the scene with a look of absolute disgust. He brushed Barrett's hand away from his suit. He looked ready to walk out. The deal was dead. Barrett knew it. Andrew looked at Tiffany. Then she looked at Barrett, who was refusing to meet her eyes. Something shifted in Andrew's posture. Her shoulders went back, her chin lifted. The exhaustion vanished from her face, replaced by a cold, sharp intelligence. She didn't retreat to the kitchen. Instead, she turned to Mr. Al-Hassan, and she spoke. The restaurant was silent, save for the rhythmic drumming of rain against the glass. Henri, the manager, was rushing over, his face pale, ready to drag Andrew away by her apron strings. Barrett was dabbing frantically at his suit, muttering apologies. Tiffany was still vibrating with rage, her mouth open to launch another insult. But Andrew raised a hand, not a servant's gesture, but a command. It was subtle, but it stopped Henri in his tracks. She looked directly at Mr. Al-Hassan, whose expression had hardened into granite. He was preparing to leave. He had seen enough disrespect to last a lifetime. Andrew took a breath, centering herself. When she spoke, the English language vanished from the air. Assalamu alaikum, ya sayyidi. Arjo al-ma'thira min fadlik. Hadhakan khata'an khair maqsood, walakin al-ihtiram wajib, wa ana atathir niyanbatan an al-fawda. Peace be upon you, sir. I beg your pardon, please. This was an unintentional mistake, but respect is mandatory, and I apologize on behalf of the chaos. The words were not just Arabic. They were Fuchsia Modern Standard Arabic, spoken with the precise, high-register cadence of a diplomat. It was the language of news anchors, poets, and royalty. The effect was instantaneous. Mr. Al-Hassan stopped buttoning his jacket. His head snapped up. The disgust on his face was replaced by sheer, unadulterated shock. He looked at the waitress at her scuffed shoes, her stained apron, her tired eyes, and then he heard the voice of an educated peer. Barrett froze. He stared at Andrew, his mouth slightly agape. Andrew, what? Tiffany blinked, her face scrunching up. What is she doing? Is she casting a spell? Stop speaking gibberish. Andrew ignored them both. She kept her eyes locked on Al-Hassan. Mr. Al-Hassan stepped closer, ignoring the water dripping from his cuff. He responded in Arabic, his voice testing her. Inti tatakalamina lugha, min aina? You speak the language? From where? Andrew bowed her head slightly, a gesture of deference, but not submission. I am a PhD candidate at Columbia University, sir. My specialization is in diplomatic relations. A slow smile spread across Al-Hassan's face. It was the smile of a man who had found water in a desert. He laughed a deep, booming sound that startled everyone in the quiet restaurant. A scholar. Al-Hassan switched back to English, but he was speaking to Andrew, not Barrett. She is a scholar hiding in an apron. Barrett laughed nervously, trying to regain control of the situation. Yes, well, our staff is very diverse. But Mr. Al-Hassan, about the deal. Al-Hassan held up a hand, silencing a billionaire with a single palm. One moment, Mr. Amanda. He turned back to Andrew. And what did you say happened with the water? My young friend here, he gestured to Barrett, says you are clumsy. Andrew glanced at Tiffany. Tiffany was seething, her face red. Tell him I want you fired, Tiffany screeched. Xander, why are you letting the help talk to him? Andrew looked back at Al-Hassan. She switched to English, so everyone could understand, but her tone remained cool and academic. Mr. Amanda is trying to be chivalrous, sir. But the truth is, his guest's elbow made contact with my arm while she was adjusting her hair. Andrew demonstrated the motion elegantly. Physics dictated the rest. Al-Hassan looked at Tiffany. He looked at her wild gestures, her anger, her lack of grace. Then he looked at Andrew's calm demeanor. I see, Al-Hassan said. Physics. A very polite way to say carelessness. I didn't touch her. Tiffany lied, but her voice cracked. Mr. Amanda, Al-Hassan said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly serious. You invited me here to discuss the Riyadh infrastructure project, a project built on trust, precision, and honor. Yes, absolutely. Barrett nodded vigorously. And yet, Al-Hassan gestured to the wet table. You cannot control your own dinner table. You allow your guest to insult a woman who is clearly her intellectual superior, and then you try to fire the innocent party to save face. This is not honorable. Barrett paled. Sir, I I am inclined to leave, Al-Hassan said, checking his watch. I do not do business with men who lack judgment. Barrett looked like he was about to vomit. This deal was worth 10 figures. It was the future of his company. If Al-Hassan walked out, the board would have Barrett's head. Please, Barrett begged, his dignity crumbling. Mr. Al-Hassan, give me a chance. Let's sit. Let's eat. I promise, no more interruptions. Al-Hassan hesitated. He looked at the door. Then he looked at Andrew. I will stay, Al-Hassan said. Barrett exhaled, his shoulders sagging with relief. Thank you. Thank you. On one condition, Al-Hassan added. Anything? Barrett said. Al-Hassan pointed at Andrew. She sits with us. The silence that followed was absolute. Excuse me? Tiffany whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. She serves the food. She doesn't eat it. She is the only person at this table I currently respect, Al-Hassan said, sitting down and smoothing his napkin. And since my English can be tiring for me after a long flight. And Mr. Amanda does not speak my language, she will act as my translator. Unless you object, Mr. Amanda, it was a trap. A beautiful, brutal trap. If Barrett said no, Al-Hassan would leave. If he said yes, he had to treat his waitress as an equal in front of his snobbish girlfriend. Barrett looked at Andrew. He saw her in a new light now, not as background noise, but as a lifeline. No objection, Barrett croaked. Henri, bring another chair. Henri, who had been watching from the shadows with his jaw on the floor, scrambled to obey. He brought a chair. Andrew untied her apron. She felt a strange sensation as she folded the dirty white fabric. It was the shedding of a skin. Underneath, she was wearing her simple black work shirt and skirt, but without the apron, she looked like a serious young professional. She sat down next to Al-Hassan, directly across from Tiffany. Tiffany looked like she was hallucinating. She picked up her knife as if she wanted to throw it. This is a joke. Is this a reality show? Xander, are we being punked? Tiffany, be quiet, Barrett snapped. It was the first time he had ever raised his voice at her. He turned to Andrew. Andrew, I didn't know you spoke Arabic. You never asked, Andrew said simply. You usually only ask for the specials. Al-Hassan chuckled. Touché. The waiter, a young man named David, who was terrified of Andrew, now brought fresh water and menus. Now, Al-Hassan said, switching to Arabic and leaning back comfortably. Tell me, Andrew, what do you think of Mr. Amanda's proposal for the solar grid in the Eastern Province? Be honest. Andrew didn't hesitate. She knew the proposal. She had read about it in the Financial Times on her break. She switched to Arabic. Technically, it is sound. However, his risk assessment for the sandstorms is optimistic, and he underestimates the local tribal zoning laws. He needs a local partner, or the permits will be stuck in bureaucracy for years. Al-Hassan's eyebrows shot up. He looked at Barrett. What did she say? Barrett asked, sweating. Is she translating? Al-Hassan smirked. She says your risk assessment is optimistic. Barrett loosened his tie. Well, we can adjust the margins. She also suggests you are ignorant of the zoning laws, Al-Hassan added, enjoying this immensely. I have a legal team, Barrett protested. Your legal team is in New York, Andrew said in English, her voice calm and authoritative. The zoning laws in Riyadh are based on municipal decrees that aren't digitized. Unless you have someone on the ground in the Diriyah municipality, you're flying blind. Barrett stared at her. How do you know that? My thesis covers urban development in the Gulf Post 2010, Andrew said. I spent 6 months in Riyadh last year on a Fulbright scholarship. I know the city better than your consultants do. Barrett was speechless. He was paying millions to consultants, and the actual expert had been refilling his water for 6 months. Tiffany couldn't take it anymore. The attention was off her. She was being ignored. She was the star, and this waitress was stealing her scene. Okay, enough. Tiffany slammed her hand on the table. Who cares about zoning? Look at her hands. Her nails are chipped. It's disgusting that she's at the table. Xander, tell them about the yacht. Tell them about us. Al-Hassan sighed. A long, weary sound. He looked at Andrew. Does she ever stop talking? He asked in Arabic. Rarely, Andrew replied in Arabic. She is like a radio that cannot be turned off. Al-Hassan laughed loudly again. Stop it, Tiffany shrieked. Stop speaking that terrorist language. The heir left the room. Barrett closed his eyes. He knew it was over. You didn't say that. You didn't say that to an Arab investor. You didn't say that in New York City. You didn't say that anywhere. Al-Hassan stood up slowly. His face was no longer amused. It was terrifying. Terrorist language? Al-Hassan repeated softly. Tiffany? Barrett whispered, his face gray. Get out. What? Tiffany looked at him, confused. Get out. Barrett hissed. Go to the car. Now. But. Now. Barrett roared, slamming his fist on the table. The silverware jumped. Tiffany recoiled. She had never seen him like this. She looked at Al-Hassan, who looked ready to destroy Amanda and Co. with a single phone call. She looked at Andrew, who was watching her with cool detachment. Tears of humiliation welled up in Tiffany's eyes. She grabbed her purse and ran out of the restaurant, her heels clacking loudly, the sound of her exit echoing in the silence she left behind. Barrett put his head in his hands. Mr. Al-Hassan. There are no words. No, Al-Hassan said coldly. There are no words. The deal is dead, Mr. Amanda. Barrett looked up, desperation in his eyes. Please, the company needs this. I need this. You chose your company poorly, Al-Hassan said, gesturing to the empty chair where Tiffany had sat. A man's judgment in private reflects his judgment in business. If you tolerate intolerance in your bed, you will tolerate it in your boardroom. He turned to leave. Wait, Andrew said. Al-Hassan paused. He turned to look at her. Andrew, don't, Barrett muttered. It's over. Mr. Al-Hassan, Andrew said, standing up. You are a man of logic. You know that Mr. Amanda's solar grid technology is the best in the market. You know his competitors are cheaper, but their tech will fail in the heat. You aren't walking away because of the deal. You're walking away because of the disrespect. Disrespect is a valid reason, Al-Hassan said. It is, Andrew agreed. But Mr. Amanda just exiled the source of that disrespect. He chose the deal over the girl. That shows he can learn. It shows he can prioritize. She took a step closer. And, she added, if you sign the deal, I will personally review the zoning contracts for the Diriyah expansion. I will ensure no permit gets stuck. Al-Hassan studied her. He looked at Barrett, who was looking at Andrew like she was an angel sent from heaven. You would work for him? Al-Hassan asked Andrew. After he tried to fire you? I wouldn't work for him, Andrew said, turning her gaze to Barrett. I would work as an independent consultant. And my fee would be substantial. Al-Hassan smiled. How substantial? Enough to pay off my student loans. Tonight, Al-Hassan laughed. He clapped his hands together. Mr. Amanda, you are the luckiest fool I have ever met. He sat back down. Sit, Andrew. Let us negotiate your fee. Mr. Amanda, order the wine. And this time, try not to spill it. Barrett looked at Andrew. He looked at the woman he had ignored for months. Thank you, he mouthed. Andrew didn't smile. She sat down, picked up the menu, and prepared to close the biggest deal of her life. But the night wasn't over. And Tiffany wasn't the type of girl to just go home and cry. She was the type of girl who called the paparazzi. Outside the window, a camera flash popped. Inside the warm, golden glow of Le Cuckoo, the atmosphere had shifted from a battlefield to a boardroom. The dinner plates were cleared, replaced by a silver pot of mint tea ordered by Andrew, prepared specifically to Mr. Al-Hassan's taste with fresh leaves she had personally retrieved from the kitchen. Barrett Amanda watched Andrew Jenkins across the table. It was disorienting. An hour ago, she was the invisible girl refilling his water glass. Now, she was dissecting the geopolitical implications of his solar grid expansion with the precision of a surgeon. The initial layout for the grid in Dammam is flawed, Andrew said, tracing a line on the blueprint Barrett had pulled up on his tablet. You've placed the primary storage units near the coastal industrial zone. The humidity there will corrode the capacitors within 18 months. You need to move them inland, here, near the plateau. Mr. Al-Hassan nodded slowly, stroking his beard. She is correct, Amanda. My engineers said the same thing last week. You did not listen to them. Perhaps you will listen to her. Barrett felt the heat rise in his cheeks. I will have the team redraw the schematics immediately. Good, Al-Hassan said. He leaned back, his eyes twinkling. Now, regarding the matter of our new consultant, Barrett turned to Andrew. He had expected her to ask for a few $1,000s, maybe a semester's tuition. Andrew, Barrett said, his voice serious, I want to hire you as a consultant for the duration of this project. Name your price. Andrew didn't blink. She sat with her hands folded on the white tablecloth. She looked at her scuffed shoes under the table, then up at the man who had spent months ignoring her existence. My price, Andrew began, her voice steady, is a retainer of $250,000, plus a 1.5% commission on the finalized contract value upon signing. Barrett choked on his tea. 250. Andrew, that's $250,000. That's a partner-level fee at a top firm. And I just saved a $2 billion deal, Andrew countered. 5% of $2 billion is $30 million, Barrett. But I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for a commission on the finalized contract, which protects you if the deal falls through. It's a risk-sharing model. It's fair. She paused, then added the kill shot. Or you can go back to relying on Tiffany's advice. I hear she has strong opinions on private jets. Mr. Al-Hassan threw his head back and laughed. She has you, Amanda. Pay the woman. If you don't, I will hire her myself and use her to negotiate against you. Barrett looked at Andrew. He saw the intelligence, the grit, the sheer competence. He realized he had been dating a decoration while being served by a diamond. Done, Barrett said. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a gold fountain pen, and grabbed a linen napkin. We'll draft the formal contract in the morning. For now, a letter of intent. He wrote quickly on the cloth. I, Barrett Amanda, hereby retain Andrew Jenkins as lead cultural and strategic consultant. He signed it and slid it across the table. Andrew looked at the napkin. It was worth more than her parents had made in their entire lives. She signed it. Pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Amanda, she said. Barrett, he corrected her, his eyes soft. Please. Call me Barrett. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Andrew said, checking her cheap plastic watch. My shift ends in 10 minutes. I still have to tip out the bussers. Mr. Al-Hassan stood up, buttoning his jacket. You will do no such thing. Tonight, you leave through the front door. As my guest. They began to walk toward the exit. The restaurant staff watched in awe. Henri, the manager, looked like he was witnessing a miracle. He bowed to Andrew as she passed. Good night, Miss Jenkins, Henri stammered. Good night, Henri, Andrew said coolly. Table 6 needs water. They reached the heavy oak doors. Barrett felt a surge of triumph. He had the deal. He had a brilliant new consultant. He had rid himself of Tiffany. It was the perfect night. He pushed the doors open to the street, and the world exploded in white light. The flashbulbs were blinding. A wall of noise hit them, shouting, clicking shutters, the aggressive shoving of paparazzi. It wasn't just 1 or 2 photographers. It was a swarm. At least 20 cameras were trained on the door. And standing in front of them, posing like a tragic heroine in a Shakespearean play, was Tiffany. She was soaking wet. She hadn't gone to the car. She had stood in the rain, letting her makeup run, letting her hair collapse, creating the perfect image of a discarded, abused victim. There he is, Tiffany screamed, pointing a manicured finger at Barrett. The monster! And there she is, the homewrecker. A reporter from the Daily Mail shoved a microphone into Barrett's face. Mr. Amanda, is it true you threw your girlfriend out into the rain to have a tryst with the help? Mr. Amanda. Did you assault Miss Dubois? Asked a stringer for TMZ. Barrett shielded his eyes, stunned. What? No. Get those cameras out of my face, He chose her. Tiffany wailed to the cameras, tears streaming down her face, tears she had summoned with impressive acting skills. I caught them. I caught them whispering in Arabic, planning. I don't know what. It sounded dangerous. And when I confronted them, he threw me out. He left me on the street. She looked at Andrew with pure venom. She's not just a waitress. She's a predator. She spilled water on me on purpose to get his attention. Mr. Alassane stepped forward, his security detail moving to intercept the cameras, but the crowd was too dense. The billionaire investor looked furious. This was exactly the kind of public circus the Saudi elite despised. This is an outrage, Al-Hassan rumbled. Stay back, sir, Barrett said, stepping in front of Al-Hassan to protect him. I'll handle this. Barrett turned to Tiffany. Tiffany, stop this insanity immediately. You are lying. Am I? Tiffany scoffed, stepping closer, knowing the cameras were eating up every second. Look at you, walking out with her. You signed something in there, didn't you? I saw through the window. Paying her off? Or paying her for? Services rendered? The insinuation hung in the air, gross and heavy. The reporters gasped. Andrew stood there, the rain beginning to dampen her hair. She looked at the frenzied mob. She looked at Tiffany, who was smirking behind her fake tears. Andrew realized Tiffany didn't care about the breakup. She cared about the narrative. If Tiffany could paint herself as the victim and Andrew as the villain, she could sell the interview for 6 figures and launch a reality show. She was monetizing her humiliation. Andrew felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Barrett. He looked terrified not for himself, but for her. Andrew, go back inside, Barrett whispered. They'll tear you apart. I'll call a car around the back. Andrew looked at him. If I run, I look guilty. If you stay, they'll destroy you, Barrett said. These people don't care about the truth. Andrew stepped out from behind Barrett. She walked straight toward the bank of microphones. Andrew, no, Barrett shouted. Andrew stopped 3 feet from Tiffany. The cameras went wild. Click, 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 click. Andrew didn't shout. She didn't cry. She waited. She stood with such perfect, silent posture that the reporters eventually quieted down, curious to hear the waitress's defense. My name, Andrew said, her voice projecting clearly without shouting, is Andrew Jenkins. I am a PhD candidate at Columbia University. I work 30 hours a week at Le Cuckoo to pay for my education because I do not have a trust fund. She turned her gaze to the TMZ reporter. Miss Dubois was asked to leave the restaurant because she referred to the Arabic language, the language of our guest, a dignitary, as terrorist noise. She then physically assaulted me and insulted the waitstaff. Tiffany's eyes went wide. Liar, you're lying. Andrew reached into her pocket. She pulled out her phone. I am a student of diplomacy, Andrew said calmly. And in diplomacy, we document everything. When Miss Dubois began screaming at the table, I started a voice recording, just in case. The color drained from Tiffany's face. Andrew held up the phone. Would you like me to play the part where she calls Mr. Al-Hassan's culture disgusting? Or the part where she screams at Mr. Amanda to shut up? The reporters turned their cameras toward Tiffany. The narrative was pivoting. Racism and tantrums were juicy, but they weren't the victim story Tiffany was selling. You wouldn't, Tiffany stammered. I would, Andrew said. Or, you can get in your car, leave, and issue a public apology to the staff of Le Cuckoo by morning. If you do that, I delete the file. It was a bluff. Andrew hadn't recorded anything. Phone use was strictly prohibited on the floor of Le Cuckoo, but Tiffany didn't know the employee handbook. Tiffany only knew fear. Tiffany looked at the cameras. She looked at Andrew's cold, unyielding face. She realized she had picked a fight with someone who was smarter, tougher, and had absolutely nothing to lose. Fine, Tiffany hissed. You can have him. He's boring anyway. She turned and shoved her way through the paparazzi, diving into an Uber that had just pulled up. The reporters turned back to Andrew, hungry for more. Miss Jenkins, is it true you're dating Mr. Amanda? Andrew looked at Barrett. He was staring at her with a mix of awe and adoration. "No," Andrew said into the microphones. "I am not dating him. I am his consultant, and we have a solar grid to build. Now, if you'll excuse us, Mr. Amanda has a car to catch." She signaled to Barrett's driver, who had finally maneuvered the black SUV to the curb. Barrett opened the door for Mr. Al-Hassan, then turned to Andrew. "Get in," Barrett said. "I take the subway," Andrew said. "Not tonight you don't," Barrett said, grabbing her hand. "You're on the payroll now, Andrew. We protect our assets." He pulled her into the warm leather interior of the car. The door slammed shut, cutting off the noise of the flashing lights. As the car pulled away, Andrew looked out the back window. The rain was blurring the city lights. She saw the restaurant fading into the distance. Her life as a waitress was over, but in the quiet of the car, sitting next to a billionaire and a Saudi tycoon, Andrew knew the real drama was just beginning, because Barrett was looking at her not just as a consultant, but as the woman who had just saved his life. And Mr. Al-Hassan was watching them both, a small smile playing on his lips. So, Al-Hassan broke the silence. "The recording. May I hear it?" Andrew smiled, leaning her head back against the seat. "There is no recording, sir." Al-Hassan burst out laughing. Barrett stared at her, wide-eyed. "You bluffed?" Barrett asked. "You bluffed the press? You bluffed Tiffany?" "Poker is a required elective in diplomacy," Andrew said, closing her eyes. Barrett shook his head, a smile spreading across his face. He reached out and gently took her hand. This time, he didn't check his watch. He didn't look at his phone. He just held on. "Where to, Mr. Amanda?" the driver asked. Barrett looked at Andrew. "Where do you live, Andrew?" "Queens," she said. "Astoria. To Astoria," Barrett commanded. "And take the long way." The heat in Riyadh was not like the humidity of New York City. It was a physical weight, a dry, golden blanket that pressed down on the tarmac of King Khalid International Airport. But for Barrett Amanda, stepping off his Gulfstream G650, the heat felt like liberation. He adjusted his sunglasses, shielding his eyes from the blinding mid-afternoon sun. Behind him, Andrew Jenkins descended the aircraft stairs. She paused halfway down, taking in the sprawling desert horizon. She looked unrecognizable from the woman who had poured water at Lukuko 3 months ago. Gone were the scuffed non-slip shoes and the frayed collar. She wore a tailored linen suit in a soft shade of oatmeal, breathable yet fiercely professional, paired with Italian leather loafers that made a sharp, authoritative click against the metal stairs. Her hair was pulled back into an elegant chignon, secured with a simple gold pin. "It's 110 degrees, Barrett noted, offering her a hand as she reached the bottom step. "Most people complain before their feet touch the ground." "I told you," Andrew said, ignoring his hand and stepping onto the tarmac with independent grace. "I spent a summer in the empty quarter, researching Bedouin dialects for my dissertation." "This isn't heat, Barrett. This is atmosphere." Barrett smiled. It was a genuine expression, something that had become a permanent fixture on his face over the last 90 days. The crushing anxiety that used to define his life, the terror of board meetings, the superficial demands of the social season, the constant noise of Tiffany had evaporated. In its place was a quiet, steel-like confidence. They were ushered into a waiting convoy of armored SUVs. The destination was the Al-Hassan private estate in Diriyah, the historic heart of the kingdom, to celebrate the official groundbreaking of the Amanda Al-Hassan solar grid. As the convoy sped down the wide, palm-lined highways, the interior of the car was a sanctuary of cool air and silence. Andrew immediately opened her leather portfolio, spreading blueprints and spreadsheets across the console between them. "The Ministry of Energy approved the secondary substations this morning," Andrew said, her finger tracing a line on the schematic. "But we have a problem with the logistics provider for the solar panels. The shipping lanes in the Red Sea are congested. I took the liberty of contacting a ground freight alternative through Jeddah. It will cost 2% more, but it guarantees delivery by the deadline." Barrett watched her. He wasn't looking at the charts. He was looking at the way her mind worked. She was a machine of efficiency, but she possessed a human touch that no algorithm could replicate. She didn't just solve problems. She anticipated them. "Do you ever stop?" Barrett asked softly. Andrew looked up, blinking. "The contract stipulates that I ensure the project stays on schedule." "I'm just doing my job, Barrett." "You're doing the job of 10 people, he countered. "You've saved this company $4 million in logistics alone in the last 6 weeks. $6.2 million. She corrected him without missing a beat. "But who's counting?" Barrett chuckled, shaking his head. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded newspaper. It was an international edition of a British tabloid. "Speaking of counting costs," Barrett said, his tone darkening slightly. "Have you seen this?" He slid the paper across the leather seat. Andrew glanced down. On the bottom half of the page was a photo of Tiffany. She looked disheveled, caught in the harsh glare of a paparazzi flash outside a Los Angeles nightclub. She wasn't wearing Valentino anymore. She was wearing a generic fast fashion dress, and her expression was one of desperate anger. The headline read, "Socialite snubbed. Tiffany Dubois dropped by PR agency after Waitress rant goes viral." "It seems the industry has a long memory," Barrett said. "After you stood up to her that night, 3 other servers from different restaurants in Manhattan came forward. Apparently, throwing drinks and insults was a habit of hers. She's been blacklisted from every major fashion event in New York." Andrew looked at the photo for a long moment. She felt a strange absence of triumph. She didn't feel happy about Tiffany's downfall. She just felt a sense of correct alignment. The world had corrected itself. "She mistook price for value," Andrew said quietly, pushing the paper away. "She thought she was important because she was expensive. She never understood that real value is what you bring to the table, not what you wear to it." "I didn't understand that either," Barrett admitted, his voice rough. "Not until you spilled water on a shake." The car slowed as they approached the massive, ornate iron gates of the Al Hassan Palace. The sun was beginning to set, casting long, purple shadows across the sand-colored walls. "Barrett," Andrew said, her voice shifting. "The professional armor cracked, just a fraction. We need to discuss the contract. The groundbreaking is tonight. Technically, my scope of work as a launch consultant concludes once the ribbon is cut." The air in the car suddenly felt heavy. "You want to discuss your exit strategy?" Barrett asked. His eyes locked on hers. "I need to know if I should book a commercial flight home tomorrow," Andrew said, her hands clasping together tightly in her lap. "My semester starts in 3 weeks. I have a thesis to defend." Barrett didn't answer immediately. The car came to a smooth halt in the courtyard. The doors were opened by attendants dressed in pristine white thobes. Barrett stepped out, buttoning his jacket. He turned and waited for Andrew. As she emerged into the twilight, the warm wind catching loose strands of her hair, Barrett realized he was looking at the architect of his future. He dismissed the attendants with a subtle wave of his hand, leaving them alone in the vast, quiet courtyard of the palace. "Andrew," Barrett said, stepping closer to her. The distance between them, usually maintained for professional decorum, vanished. "I am not renewing your contract." Andrew felt her stomach drop. She had expected this. She was the help, after all. A highly paid, highly educated help, but still temporary. "I understand," she said, lifting her chin, refusing to let him see the hurt. "I will prepare the handover files by morning." "You aren't listening," Barrett interrupted gently. "I'm not renewing your contract as a consultant because I don't want you to work for me anymore." He reached out and took her hand. His grip was firm, warm, and possessive. "I want you to be my partner," he said. "In the company. I'm creating a seat on the board for you, Director of International Strategy. You'll have equity, veto power, and your name on the door." Andrew stared at him, her mouth slightly agape. "Barrett, the board will never approve that. I'm a student. The board does what I tell them," Barrett said with a newfound authority. "And if they don't, I'll fire them. I learned from the best." Andrew laughed, a breathless sound. "Is that the only offer?" Barrett's expression softened. He stepped even closer, his other hand coming up to cup her cheek. "No," he whispered. "There is a second offer. But it's personal, and it requires a longer commitment than the first one." How long? Andrew asked, her heart hammering against her ribs. Ideally, decades, Barrett said. I don't want to wake up without you, Andrew. I don't want to navigate this world without you. You didn't just save the deal that night in New York. You saved me from a life of shallowness. You woke me up. Andrew looked into his gray eyes. She saw the vulnerability there, the raw honesty that Tiffany had never bothered to look for. I have a condition, Andrew said, her voice trembling. Name it, Barrett said. Anything. The jet? A house in Paris? Tuition for every student in your department? No, Andrew smiled, tears pricking the corners of her eyes. No more tap water. Ever. Barrett threw his head back and laughed, the sound echoing off the palace walls. Done. Only the best. For the rest of our lives. He leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't a tentative kiss, and it wasn't for show. It was a seal on a new contract, one written not in ink, but in shared respect and undeniable love. Behind them, the massive wooden doors of the palace opened. Mr. Al-Hassan stood there, flanked by dignitaries. He saw the billionaire and the scholar, hand in hand, standing as equals against the backdrop of the Arabian Night. Mr. Al-Hassan smiled, stroking his beard. He turned to his aide. Get the good champagne, Al-Hassan murmured, and bring another chair to the head table. The Queen has arrived. Andrew Jenkins took Barrett's arm. She straightened her spine, walked toward the light, and stepped into her new life. She had walked into Le Coco as a servant, but she was walking into history as a legend. In a world obsessed with appearances, it is easy to forget that the most powerful person in the room is often the one you overlook. Andrew's story is a reminder that dignity, intelligence, and grace are currencies far more valuable than gold or fame. Tiffany had the dress, the followers, and the arrogance, but she lacked the one thing that truly commands respect: humanity. Barrett Amanda learned the hard way that a partner isn't someone who looks good in a photo, but someone who makes you better in real life. Andrew didn't just win the heart of a billionaire. She won the respect of an empire, proving that while you can buy a seat at the table, you have to earn the right to speak. Wow, what a journey. If Andrew's savage takedown of Tiffany gave you chills, or if you loved seeing Barrett finally wake up and realize what a true partner looks like, smash that like button right now. Have you ever been underestimated by someone just because of your job or how you looked? I want to hear your story. Drop a comment below. Let's expose the Tiffany's of the world together. And if you want more stories about karma, romance, and underdogs taking over the world, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell icon so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching, and remember, never let anyone treat you like tap water when you know you're premium sparkling. See you in the next one.